Okay, here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to what is the second session of the ITP Psychology Group, which is being led by Dr. Andrew Morgan, Principal Clinical Psychologist from Liverpool University NHS Trust. Welcome, Andrew. Also from the ITP Support Association, we also have Rhonda Anderson here, one of our mentors. Um, We've got probably about 40 people registered for tonight. So if we want to crack on, we do need to finish more or less dead on time at 7 o'clock as well. So I'm going to hand over to Andrew now and let Andrew start his talk. Andrew, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mervyn. Yeah, I'm Andrew. Welcome to session number 2 of 3. Just a quick recap of the format here. So we're doing something a little bit new, a little bit interesting, the idea of running multiple sessions for a psychology group. It wasn't just me talking, presenting some information. What we wanted was something that was a little bit like a taster of therapy, meaning that each session sort of builds on the previous one, meaning that there's some sort of a home task or an exercise that people could do that we could talk about the time after. It's a bit of a new experiment because normally these sorts of groups aren't nearly so big. And so one of the things that we're really interested in is feedback. So after the sessions, you'll probably receive via email a feedback form. We'd really welcome any comments people have about how it could be improved in case we ever do it again, because we are sort of on a bit of a unexplored frontier here. And the type of therapy that I specialize in hematology is called acceptance and commitment therapy. And that's a therapy that says that the whole point, the central aspect of psychological well-being is living a meaningful life, even when things are stressful. So that's what we're talking about here. This is an ITP specific group, but as we saw last time, the sorts of things that cause people stress in life, the sorts of patterns of behavior or of thinking that might make that worse, are universal across all sorts of different problems. So please don't feel obliged to only talk about ITP. There might be other things that come up, but it might be tangentially related. Last time we heard from someone that they were currently off work because they were recovering. And that was the obstacle of trying to find things to do with their time, trying to get their motivation back, that kind of thing. So all psychology is related fundamentally, I believe. In terms of group principles, this is a recorded session, so it's not confidential. It's going to go on YouTube. The first session's already up for anyone who hasn't seen it and is interested. So what that means is only talk about the things that you're comfortable talking about. If anything difficult comes up during our conversation and you feel particularly distressed, my suggestion would be to talk to someone that you trust and that you care about. You could also talk to your GP or to your clinical team, your hematology team, if you're open to one. And if you or a loved one are ever in a situation where you're worried about someone's ability to keep themselves safe because of distress, what we say is to phone 111. You can turn your camera off if you want. You can leave if you need to at any time. I won't take offense. You don't have to talk either. Contributions are certainly welcome, but just actively listening is a valuable contribution in and of itself. If you do have anything to say, please just butt in. It's hard for me to monitor the hands going up on Zoom, especially with a bigger group. So just start talking. We'll probably talk over each other a little bit, but we'll find a way around that. So what I wanted to do is start with a quick recap of last time, both for anyone who wasn't here, but also just to refresh our memories because it was a while ago. So last time, the big idea we discussed was the choice between overthinking and being present. Overthinking meaning worrying about the future, ruminating about the past, engaging in excessive self-criticism, the sort of thinking where we're turning the same problems over and over in our head. And my feeling is that overthinking is probably the main way that human beings make an already difficult life even harder for themselves. Life's given us a big pile of stress to deal with because of situations like ITP or financial worries or relationships, whatever it is. And overthinking is a way that we can add an almost unlimited amount of stress to that pile. Being present, on the other hand, is a couple of different versions of that concept that we were discussing last time. One of them is being present in our surroundings with our senses, tuning in to the taste of your cup of tea or your sandwich, to the sound of the birds, to the conversation that you're having with a person. But it can also mean engaging in an activity like reading a book or cooking a recipe or whatever it is that you're into. One of the things we spoke about last time is that you can't do both things at once. You can't be overthinking about your problems and be fully present in the conversation. You can't be worrying about that appointment you've got coming up at the hospital next week and be fully engaged with that TV program you're watching. So that's why I talk about it as a choice. It's a bit like a fork in the road. Do we overthink about our problems or do we tune into what's in front of us? When we talk about being present, it's not just an alternative to overthinking, although that is an important part of it. We also discussed how we get more out of our lives when we are present. We enjoy that program more. We connect with our friend more when we're present in the conversation. We enjoy our meals more when we're tuned into them. So it's really two birds with one stone when we choose to be present. Less overthinking, less stress, more meaning, more engagement. The final thing we discussed last time is that choosing to be present is a skill that we can practice. And I discussed an exercise at the end of the session, sent around some instructions, and suggested that people might want to try a couple of minutes a day of doing this exercise. And it was a breathing exercise where essentially we focus on our breath. When we inevitably get distracted by a thought or a feeling or a sound, we notice that and come back to the breath. And every time we practice that refocusing, we're developing this skill that then we can use in everyday life. When we're watching TV and we realize we've got no idea what's going on because we've been thinking about that appointment coming up, we can notice that, come back to the TV program, minimize our stress, and also enjoy our recreation time. So that was the main stuff we covered last time. So I wanted to hand it over to you guys and just ask, did anyone have any thoughts, comments, or questions about the material from last time that might have come up since we last spoke? Or any thoughts about what I've just said, if maybe you weren't there?
Anyone, just put your hand up if you want to.
Yeah, or just shout out,
Yeah.
whatever suits you. No, all pretty straightforward. Um, did anyone have a go of the mindfulness exercise? Did anyone try that out? And if so, how did it go? Any thoughts about that?
I didn't think about that specifically
Mm.
because I do a lot of that sort of thing anyway. But I did, yes, I did try it and do more. And also, I found a book on overthinking,
Mm.
and I've been reading that, and I think it's quite interesting, the points that were brought up in it, where you can see when you're talking to other people how they are overthinking and making things complicated, and also, of course, with yourself.
Yes, I think that's one of the beauties of psychology is that anything that you learn about others or see in others is always going to be true of us as well. Um, Rhonda, could you say a couple of words on what you see as the benefits of doing the mindfulness practice? Why is it that you keep it up?
Because I think that it's calming.
Mm.
I think we all have very busy lives, and that to take time out to do some meditation or some mindfulness or some exercise that concentrates on breathing. I do things like yoga and Pilates and various things like that. And I find that that is something that I can concentrate on with breathing, with movement, listening to the teacher, copying what's happening, and you do get into the zone sort of thing. and it does help you to lose the worries and the frustrations and the different things that that are bothering you.
Yeah. So that zone that you mentioned, it sounds a lot like the idea of being present.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
have you noticed, Rhonda, that as you practice these things at yoga or in meditation, that it has helped you to choose to be present outside of those contexts?
Oh, yes, definitely. And I think I'm probably calmer and the way I deal with things. And also, I see both sides of the question more.
One of the things I would say is that if anyone was sitting there and they thought, well, either I didn't get the material because it wasn't here, or I didn't have a chance to try it out. One of the great things with psychology is it's got no sell-by date, right? So in a year's time, you might think to yourself, blimey, I'm going through a tough time right now. You can dig that stuff out and it'll be just as relevant and useful then as it would be now. Has anyone had any examples? Does anyone have any examples of times in the recent past where they've experienced any successes or challenges when it comes to overthinking or being present? And what I mean by successes here is times when they maybe noticed they were overthinking and chose to stop, or times when they were present and engaged in something and it felt satisfying or meaningful.
I find that I can only really be mindful if I'm moving. If I'm stationary, I'm being trying to be mindful, I get much more anxious because it's almost like if my brain and body isn't moving, then I can't calm down. So if I'm playing sport or if I'm riding or with on a horse or if I'm doing something, then I can be really, really present. But put me in a mindful position, which I think is a stereotypical sit down, stay still, and kind of let thoughts pass by. That doesn't work for me at all. It makes me really much more anxious. So I'm either doing it wrong or I've decided not to tell myself that I'm doing it wrong. I've told myself that I just need to move to be calm and mindful. Is that a thing?
Yes, and I love the way that you finished that comment, Bonnie, that it is still being mindful. You're just moving around. And I like your story because it's something that rings true for me that part of the idea of practicing this stuff is to learn what works for you and what doesn't. I never ask my clients to try mindfulness with the expectation it's going to fix their problems or it's going to become a lifelong hobby. But they might discover things from doing it, like you've said, of, well, actually, that doesn't work for me, but it shines a light on this other thing that does, uh,
Yeah.
which is what this is all about. Can I ask Bonnie that when you're moving around, when you're doing sport on your horse, it sounds fantastic. What about when you're at home? Do you ever do anything with your body there that help you to detach from overthinking? Have you found anything that works in that situation?
Yeah, so I have my yoga mat permanently out now. I used to have it in the cupboard and I'd bring it out, but even going to get it was just like not kind of very motivating. So I've got it out on the floor the whole time. And if I feel myself going a little bit like giddy, I'll just do the same set of a routine stretches that take about 6 minutes, and it keeps me really focused because it's the same thing over and over again. I know what I'm doing. I feel like it's doing good and it's movement. So yeah, I generally hop on that. And leaving it out has been I only really thought of doing that in the last couple of months. But because I always like packing everything away and everything being clear. But now I've just decided that is a feature. So I just hop onto that a lot, basically. Yeah.
One of the main things that my clients say to me or have said to me over the years is that sometimes just changing room,
Yeah.
going to make a cup of tea, go in the toilet, going to stand in the bedroom and shuffle the duvet around or whatever is enough of a break to get them out of that headspace where they were overthinking or whatever it is. There's something about human beings being physical, being aware of our surroundings, that something as seemingly simple as that can be an effective strategy.
The other thing that's been massive for me is I've just started playing the bass guitar, and every time I do this kind of I just pick it up and play, and then it goes away. So I find if I replace it with something, either it's movement or music, then that's way more successful than me sitting and being still, because that just makes me immensely anxious.
Yeah, and I would say, Bonnie, that when I mentioned before about the idea that being present and engaged is two birds with one stone, that it sounds to me like not only are you getting the benefits of being present, so less stress, but also you're getting to do things that are genuinely interesting and satisfying to you.
Yeah.
And that's a win-win, isn't it? So I would always say to people, some people love mindfulness, right? And it is a hobby of theirs. But for most people, it's just a stepping stone to, okay, well, I know now that I can refocus if I need to. Let's refocus on something more interesting than my breath, like a guitar or whatever it is. I think that's a really nice way to take it.
May I just add there that there is mindfulness and movement, and some people that it's very popular now, this phrase forest bathing, where people go out into the greenery somewhere. I mean, it might be a small patch in your garden, or it might be enormous Epping Forest, which is near me. And by doing a mindful walk where you're actually concentrating on how your feet are touching the ground and what you're feeling coming back from that, or listening to the breeze in the trees and moving around at the same time. I think Bonnie's got such a good point there, that people sometimes don't want to be sitting still doing meditation or mindfulness in that way, and a lot of people find it very difficult, which I understand. So I think that you can actually take that out into the environment and move around in your environment, and this tends to be very helpful to people. There are lots of articles about forest bathing or various things like that, being out in the countryside.
Okay. So, enough of the stuff from last time. Let's move on to the new big idea for today. So, the big idea for today is values, or what matters to us, or what's meaningful, or what's purposeful. It all means the same thing. And this is, as I mentioned before, this is the heart of acceptance and commitment therapy. This is trying to reduce overthinking, let's say, is just a means to an end of living a meaningful life, of enjoying the guitar and enjoying exercise and enjoying walks in the forest and enjoying our relationships and all this kind of stuff. One of the key points here, which isn't immediately obvious, is that this is not the same as being happy, because there are some things in our life that are incredibly meaningful that don't make us, especially in the short term, happy. And the best example I ever saw of this in my life is that I had a family member who passed away from cancer, and my mum, who used to be a nurse, nursed this person when he was at home, and then went to see him in the hospice a lot and stuff like that. And it made her sad, and it was hard. But there was nowhere else on earth that she would rather be than by the side of this person that she loved. And that always stood out to me as a brilliant encapsulation of this idea that chasing happiness, just doing the things that feel good in the moment, is not necessarily the best strategy for living a meaningful life. A lot of the things that are meaningful to us are very difficult. Think about our relationships with people, think about challenges that we aspire to overcome in life, achievements or whatever that is. There's lots of stress and struggle that can come with those, and that can be okay if in the long term they pay off and make us feel more satisfied. So if I was to sum up why values, doing what matters to us, is the heart of acceptance and commitment therapy, what I would say is that our values, our meaning, is like rocket fuel for a human being. It's the fuel that drives us Now, any of us after this conversation could turn on the news and see example after example of human beings doing the most courageous or amazing things, running into burning buildings, running through literal machine gun fire, because there's something they care about on the other side. But if you take those same human beings and you remove the meaning from their life, you remove them from society, from friends and family, from religion, nationality, football team, whatever it is that's meaningful for them, what you see is that those same human beings will start to struggle to get out of bed. They'll start to struggle to leave the house, to clean themselves, to eat, that sort of thing. It's as if the human robot just starts to slowly shut down. Psychiatrists, some medics refer to that as something like major depressive disorder. But how we understand it in ACT, in acceptance and commitment therapy, and in psychology is it's someone who's disconnected from meaning. So when we're connected with our values and doing what matters to us, not only does it make us better able to deal with stress, it's a bit like being super powered, but it also, as I say, just makes life fundamentally more satisfying, makes all the struggle that we have to go through with ITP, with whatever the stressor is, feel more worthwhile in general. Does anyone have any examples from their life or any thoughts about times when they have to do things that are difficult, that might make them feel anxious or that might make them feel sad or whatever it is, but they do it anyway because it's important to them? An example from my work, I know a lot of my clients, people with ITP or other hematological conditions, don't like coming to the hospital. They might even find psychology sessions stressful. It's hard talking about this stuff sometimes, but they wake up in the morning, they feel a bit anxious, and they push themselves to come generally because they feel like I want to improve my well-being for myself and for the people around me. That would be a sort of example, although there's many that come up in our lives. Does anyone have any from their personal experience that they would care to share?
Just from myself, Andrew. A number of years ago, I had a bout of cancer, and I had an operation and was going through a really tough time because of the painkilling medication that they gave me, and I wanted to, get off that. So I asked at the hospital, was there any support out there? And they put me on to CBT therapy, which I must admit, when I first looked at it and analysed it and investigated what it meant, I was somewhat skeptical. But I was soon, after a couple of weeks, I was soon, sort of taken in. It works. It worked. And it solved the issue. And I came off, I managed to come clean from the, painkilling meds, and using the techniques, the tools and techniques that they gave me to think of different parts of your body, etc., and all that, that actually, became the means of controlling pain, and it does work.
Yeah, fantastic example. And as I say, I think one of the things that's easy to underestimate for a lot of us is how often this sort of thing plays out in our everyday lives. I speak for myself here, but there are times when I wake up in the morning and I think, oh, I'm not looking forward to today for whatever reason. I don't really want to go to work today. And then I think, no, come on, there's people there that, depend on you, or, you've got to pay your mortgage or whatever it is. And I kind of haul myself out of bed and get on with it because I have a sense that, well, there's a bigger picture here at play. This is meaningful for me to get out and do these things, even though my mind and body are telling me I'm a bit anxious about this, or I'm feeling a little bit low, or whatever it is. Does anyone have any examples of anything like that that they would be willing to share with us?
If you have, just shout.
It's fine if not. I assume the concept makes sense. I know it's a bit of a weird thing. That's why I like to talk through the examples, because it is a bit of a different way of looking at things. Okay, so when it comes to this idea of valued living, meaning living a life that's meaningful, living a life that's in line with what matters to us, there's something that I feel like I've noticed from my clinical work, a strategy that people use in our culture that for some people ends up being not very helpful. And I refer to that as the one-legged values table, or maybe the two-legged values table. So imagine that you've got a coffee table, and the surface of the tabletop represents your psychological well-being. And you've got one or two legs supporting this table. They're your valued areas. Maybe, well, something I see a lot is, say, family and work. And people put all the time and energy into those two things. And what happens is that when something disrupts one of those areas, like work's particularly hard, maybe the company's not performing well, people are getting laid off, or there's bullying or something like that, or with their family, someone's unwell, or there's arguments, that sort of thing, the leg buckles and the table becomes really unstable. In other words, it's particularly upsetting to the person because they were the baskets they had all their eggs in, right? So what that made me think is that maybe a better strategy for some people is to try and add more legs to their table, to have a bunch of different valued areas so that when something goes wrong at work or with family, then they've got things in their life that are still meaningful and satisfying that they can turn to whilst they repair that leg. So, your friendships or your guitar playing or your time in nature or whatever that is. So that's the basic idea. And also, I just think that human beings are complicated creatures and we have multiple different needs. I work with a lot of people who have dedicated their whole lives to their family or to work. And when you ask them, well, what do you do for fun? It's a hard question for a lot of people to answer. And they say, I'm too busy for fun. And that's one of the main things we work on is, in my opinion, humans need to have fun. So let's make some time for fun or nature, spirituality, whatever that is. So the metaphor that I came up with to describe this different way of thinking about valued living is all about houseplants. So I thought of this when I was working during lockdown in my flat doing clinics, and all I could see were houseplants around me. There wasn't much to look at. And the idea is, imagine that you have a collection of houseplants. Maybe you've got 4, 5, 6 houseplants in your garden. It doesn't really matter how many, but they all bring you joy. They all bring you pleasure. They're all worth looking after. Maybe you've got a favorite one that's more beautiful than the others, but they're all worth taking care of. And these represent the valued areas in your life, the things that are meaningful to you. Now, every week, life gives you a certain amount of water in a watering can that represents your time and energy that you can use to water some of these plants. It's not enough to water every plant every week, but that's okay because houseplants don't need watering every week. Does anyone have any thoughts about a strategy that you could use to decide which houseplants that you should water on any given week with your limited time and energy, which valued areas you should put that time and energy into? How would we know which ones to go with?
Take some time out to just sort of reflect where each area was.
Yes. Yes. And when you say
like stock take sort of.
Yes. And what kind of things would you be looking for, Monica, to let you know that this is a plant that needs watering?
Perhaps the last time I was involved in something, if it was a hobby or something.
Yes, I totally.
Or last time I met a friend.
But it sounds like you've been reading my notes, Monica, or you've heard me say this before. I totally agree with you. Basically, to extend the metaphor, seeing how dry the plant is, right? So what we wouldn't do is pick our favorite plant, our family, let's say, and just keep pouring all our water into that one. Because what will happen then is that the other plants, the other areas of our life that are important to us would suffer from drought. And then our family plants can get overwatered and can become rotten, can drown. And I see that quite a lot where people have something they really care about, like ITP, for instance, and they focus all their time and energy onto that. And what happens is it can almost have a toxifying effect where they become more anxious about it. They start to organize their life around understanding their condition or trying to manage it. And it's almost like the more, if we overinvest in a valued area, what can happen is it can become even more anxiety provoking. So yes, spreading out the water a little bit, just like you said, Monica. So what I've got for us that I'm going to invite people to have a look at between the sessions is something I give to all my clients. And it's a worksheet, it's a piece of paper. You'll get it via email. The intent of which is to help us to identify what plants we want in our garden, what are the things that matter to us, and then to decide which ones we should water next with our time and energy, our limited, precious time and energy. So the actual email has instructions on it. I've just simplified it to fit on the slide. But basically what we're looking at here is a list of the most common valued areas in people's lives. Things like family, friendships, occupation, fun, that kind of thing. And the idea is to go through each of these and in the importance column to give them a number from 1 to 10. If 1 is not at all important and 10 is extremely important. And that's a bit like asking ourselves the question, how beautiful is this house plant? How much joy do we get from having this around? And I've never met anyone who cares equally about all of these areas. Everyone I've worked with, there's some of these that just don't float the boat at all. But everyone I've worked with also has some where they think, yeah, that's for me. That's a big part of satisfaction in my life. And then what we do is we go through the satisfaction column and score each one 1 to 10. 1 means I'm not at all satisfied with how this has been going recently. 10 means I'm very satisfied. In other words, is this plant bone dry or is it really well watered? And what we end up with at the end is a pair of numbers for each value that can tell us interesting things. For example, you might have someone who says family, super important to me. I'm going to give that a 10 or a 9 in importance, but I've been so busy with work or I've been feeling so tired because of illness or whatever it is that I haven't called my mum for ages or I haven't been around to see my brother or whatever it is. So it's a 10 in importance, but a 4 in satisfaction. And where we see that, that's our cue to say, right, this week, I'm going to make time, my water in my watering can, to give my mum a call. Or I really like going outside and walking in nature, or I really like crafts. I've not done it for ages because I've been so busy helping my family. So this time, this week, I'm going to set aside time to go for a walk in the park or get my crafts out or whatever it is. Any questions that people have about that exercise? I know that some people find that understandably a little bit of a not curveball, but you know, sometimes it's not totally clear. Any thoughts on that?
I think one thing is that's fine if you're in employment, but as I'm retired and work was important, that career occupation, it's kind of what volunteering do you find meaningful or whatever. It just might need to be a wider category for wider people.
I think that's a really good point, Sue. And I would say that, you know, I take your point and it's not obvious, but when I say occupation, it's exactly what I mean. Yeah, volunteering. It's whatever you, if you have like a big project, something you're a part of that's bigger than you, that you spend your time doing, and volunteering, especially for people who've retired or for some other reason aren't working, I think is the perfect example of that. And you're exactly right to point out that, or to imply that the value that we can get from, say, volunteering is exactly the same as the value we could get from showing up and getting paid, or very, very similar, let's say. Can I ask, Sue, do you have you had any experience of volunteering?
I think one of the problems is the last 4 years with my ITP, my health's been very fluctuating as I've reacted to a lot of treatments. So to be consistent in volunteering has been difficult. And perhaps I put the values on myself. If I'm doing something, I'll do it. And so I know it's something I need to redress. Now my health's a bit more plateauing at the moment.
Yeah.
Because I've missed it.
What is it that you have missed about volunteering? What's meaningful about it for you?
For me, it's been some of the social aspects and the being connected to other people. And some of the jobs I've had have been fairly nurturing in developing skills in other people. It's been seeing a change in other people too.
That's a perfect example. And I love the way, so you've pointed out a key point about choosing to water our plants. It's a bit like, instead of a normal watering can, we kind of got a split stream sort of thing where one activity can water multiple plants at once. You can go to volunteer somewhere and get a sense that you're contributing to something bigger than you, and also social connections, and also use your skills, in a way that's satisfying. Has that been your experience, Sue, that it's more than just one thing you get out of volunteering? Yeah. That's a brilliant example. Any other thoughts about the sheet in general, or any of the values that are on there? Do any of these jump out at people as being the sort of thing where they think, yeah, that floats my boat, that's something I care about?
Just so everyone's aware, I've actually put the link so you can download this value sheet. It's in the chat. So along with Dr. Morgan's slides as well, they're also in the chat.
I really think all of those things, because, we have so many, well, a lot of people do anyway, have so many different aspects to their lives. So I think that it's a very good idea to visit all of these categories and to look at how you do parcel out your time to, water every one of them, really.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely, especially for someone who has a variety of interests, definitely a noble aspiration. I'm interested in the point that you brought up, Sue, about the impact that ITP can have, or any sort of major life event, on someone's ability to keep doing the things they used to do. Retirement is one of the most psychologically disruptive life events for a lot of people, because we put so much time and energy into our careers, and then it's taken away from us, and it leaves a sort of values hole in our life that can be hard to fill. Does anyone have any thoughts on how ITP has impacted on their ability to do the things that matter to them?
I think, just as a general point around looking down the list of the values, you could see something important in a lot of those and aspire to those. But I'd recognize where I've had to give up things over the years of ITP, with just recognizing, even with medication, a background fatigue. And so you think you can do all these things, and then you do one of them and you're wiped out for the day. So I think for myself, in looking down this, it's also to be not to hit myself on the head as to what I, almost committing to too many things that are important.
Yes.
So it's how I limit myself to the really, perhaps just make it smaller for me.
I think that's a really good point, and it calls to mind the conversation I have quite a lot when we're doing this exercise about it's not just what we do, but how we do it. There's a quality to how we engage in the important areas of our life that can make them more or less meaningful. And so is give an example, a small example, which are our favorite ones of. I was doing this with someone and I asked them to tell me what their goal was for this week. And that's part of the reason why I say pick one thing a week, because, I think this could easily be overwhelming. And what the chap said to me was, one of the things I've noticed is that I spend too much time overthinking. I'm not present enough. And when I get up in the morning and have my first hot drink of the day, what I do is I scroll through the news or I scroll through work emails and I just sort of inhale my drink. I don't even notice I'm having it and I'm already stressed. So his goal was to leave his phone in the other room and really enjoy his cup of coffee, look out in his garden. So what I love about that example was he wasn't doing anything additional to what he was already doing. In fact, he was doing a bit less in terms of, mentally thinking a lot and understanding the news and stuff. But that was meaningful to him because it gave him more enjoyment of the things that he would have been doing anyway. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Gosh, not to disclose too much about myself, but I have plenty of conversations in my life of people I love where I'm only half present. If I get home from work and my partner's telling me about her day, but I've had a rough day and I'm trying to get my cup of tea ready or whatever, I know there are times when I can make a conscious decision to say, no, stop, actually listen, right? And that connects us more. And I feel like I get more out of the relationship. And I imagine she does too. But I don't have to go in my diary and say, right, Wednesday afternoon, I'm going to go for a run around the park or whatever it is. Nothing that kind of time or energy intensive. But little tweaks in psychology in general can really add up. And that's why I always say to people, the best steps to take when it comes to watering your plants are the small ones, the sustainable ones that gradually build up, not jumping in the deep end, trying to do too much too soon. And that's even for people who aren't dealing with fatigue. So it's even more important in this context.
That's a very helpful comment. Thank you.
And also, it comes to mind what you mentioned before as well of like, one of our biggest obstacles when it comes to living a valued life, and I know this from our work with people with ITP and other health conditions too, is self-criticism. It's the shoulds, right? I should be able to do this. I should be able to do that. And that's a real challenge. And that's why I always start psychology with the overthinking part. Because being able to notice when we're engaged in that kind of thinking and we're turning over and over our heads, we're focusing on what we can't do. That's lost time and energy that we could be spending on the things we can do. So if we get decent at that, refocusing from overthinking, we can reinvest that time and energy into stuff from this list. Easier said than done. A lot of psychology is simple, doesn't make it easy. But as I say, if you believe in acceptance and commitment therapy, like certainly I do, this is the meaning of life, right? So the payoff is pretty significant. Any other thoughts people have on anything we're discussing here or anything that's on the sheet?
I could just make one small comment about fatigue and whatever causes your fatigue, ITP or other things. Sometimes it's useful to have a timer and just to spend 10 minutes doing something. And when the timer goes off after the 10 minutes is to stop and rest. And then you feel that you have achieved something in that 10 minutes. And if you don't feel quite so fatigued, you could extend the time and feel that you would like to do a bit more or a bit less, depending on how you are. And I find that very useful for actually making myself do something as well that I want to get done.
Yeah, small tasks.
Absolutely, small bits. Yeah. And you do feel a sense of satisfaction, even if you only spend 10 minutes doing something.
Yes.
And that's a nice sort of positive feedback loop to yourself, because then you'll probably feel more excited. I use the word advisedly about doing another 10 minutes.
Yeah, you're right.
It's a brilliant idea. And again, I think about You know, I'm the sort of person who, if I get a text off someone and I'm busy or I'm stressed, I'll think, oh, I'll do that later. I'll answer that email later. It doesn't take me 10 minutes even to give away too much about myself, but it doesn't take me 10 minutes to text my mum back. She says, how are you doing? And I say, I'm doing all right. How are you? But it's meaningful, makes me feel better about myself, and it's important to hear. These little things can make a difference. So yeah, again, I would always start on the small side of stuff. And not even necessarily build up, but the steps themselves build up as you do them day after day, week after week. One of the things I like about this sheet is the questions that are next to the values, because they invite people to think a bit more deeply about why this stuff is important. To give an example from my work, I've worked with two different men, separate psychology engagements, and they both said to me, I care a lot about being a good dad. And so I say to them, well, what's being a good dad mean to you? And they say, well, I want to be there for my daughter. Okay, well, what's that mean to you? And one of them says, well, when she phones me at 4 a.m. to come and pick her up, I want to be there. When she needs 100 quid for this thing, I want to be there. The other one said, when she's got a problem and she needs someone to talk to, I want to be there. And so we got to the bottom and realized that these two men, they never met each other, but I realized these two men both had ideas about being a good dad. They were valued areas, but they had very different concepts of what that would look like. In other words, they'd have to behave quite differently to water those plants. So it's well worthwhile thinking about, if you care about your family or you care about nature, whatever, how and why and what would that look like for you? Because that's going to give you some really good clues to the kinds of things that you could do that could help you to feel satisfied in those areas. On the sheet, there's a couple of extra boxes for people to write in their own valued areas. And one has come to my mind listening to everyone talk, and that's our relationship with ourselves. When I ask people what sort of family member do you want to be, what sort of partner, they'll often say to me, kind, compassionate, caring. My observation from doing this job for a good few years now is that that's the thing that most people struggle with when it's directed towards themselves. And I know that can be a major issue in ITP and other similar situations. So maybe that's worth thinking about too, of what kind of person do we want to be to ourselves? Because then if we do have a day where we're too fatigued to go out or whatever it is, there's still opportunity to act in line with our values by how we talk to ourselves, by the kinds of messages we give to ourselves, the sense we make of the fact that we're tired. Do we beat ourselves up for not going outside? We plan to do it, but we can't. Maybe it's an opportunity to live our values in terms of self-compassion. Any ideas people have looking at this sheet, just, brainstorming for steps that you could take, small steps that you feel like could water one of these plants, just for some ideas to throw around? We've heard a few already, but any others come to mind?
I like to make lists. That helps me to feel more organized, more in control. And I have great pleasure in ticking off the things I've done on the list. Because I think it just helps you sometimes when you've got lots of things in your head that you think you want to do. Where it's just like your shopping list, really. You think, oh, I need this, I need that, I need something else, and you don't write it on the list and you forget about it. And when you go to the shop or order it or whatever, but if you make your list, you've got it there and you've got it under your control and you don't forget it and you do it. So sometimes I do that with, emails or phone calls or things I want to do. I put them on my list as well because it's so easy to forget and to overlook things that you really want to do.
I'm the same. I have post-it notes everywhere. My desk is a sea of post-it notes. things not to forget. So yeah. So
Yeah, I think we're all there. The to-do list, a bit of journaling or something like that.
I was thinking that so I used to do a lot of crafts and have given those up over the years, really, but it's something that I would attach importance to. And so perhaps thinking of a particular one, I was thinking of needle felting, but breaking it down into smaller pieces, because to start needle felting seems too much. But that idea of just spending a smaller amount of time on it. And then over the weeks, I would manage to complete a project. I hadn't thought of splitting it down into 10 minutes or something.
Perfect example. What does needle felting do for you, Monica? Why is that meaningful?
Well, I like crafts, and I think you've probably seen them around. Just take a piece of wool and it's just stabbing it with a special needle that knots the wool together. So you can make animals, and some people make flowers and all sorts out of them. So it's the creativity of what you can make out of something quite simple. That didn't need a lot of equipment to get going.
Perfect example. And I love the way you, Monica, and you previously, Ron, you identified the reason why these activities are meaningful to you. We heard from Monica there that the crafts scratch that creative itch, right? The lists scratch that being organized list. These are the values: creativity, organization. These are the aspects of our character that are important to us, that need watering or make us feel like life is going well. And I would say this is different for different people. Now, I work with some people for whom the to-do list is the biggest millstone around their neck, right? I'm the least creative person in this call. I write sometimes, but I wouldn't know what to do with a needle and a piece of felt. So like finding out what it is for you that floats your boat is such a massive step towards this idea of being able to proactively on the front foot organize our time and energy to make life even more satisfying than it already is. Even when things are really difficult. And as we said before, when we're engaged in these things, when we have these things to lean on in times of stress, it makes getting through these major life events, these challenges, much easier most of the time. So this is exactly what we're after, right? Is once a week with a cup of tea, cup of coffee, have a look at this list, pick one plant that you feel like could be watered, and then whether it's 10 minutes or however long it takes, saying, right, this week I'm going to have a go of this. And like was mentioned before, a great place to start are the things that you used to do that you've lost touch with. The things that that have been on hold, or the things you always wanted to have a go of, but then you never got round to. These areas where you're not already spending a lot of time and energy. Yeah, that's the general idea.
Don't you think also perhaps with the friendship one, you need to be intentional, not just, oh, we'll have a cup of coffee sometime. I could do Tuesday morning or Thursday afternoon, whatever, and then get some response. And, you're going to say no one ever contacts me.
Totally. And that's a great example, Sue, of getting on that front foot.
Mm.
One thing I've learned from doing this job is that time, opportunities, they're not things people say to me sometimes, oh, I didn't have the time, or the opportunity didn't come up. But the people I work with who make the best go of this, what they'll say to me is, well, I made the time, or I made the opportunity. And that's why making a date with ourselves to sit down and do is exactly like you said, Sue, of like, right, I want to meet my friend, not just in the abstract in the future, but Wednesday at 2 o'clock for a coffee, right? That's what makes it happen. Because we've all got great ideas in our head, right? Great intentions and wishes to do things, but actually executing on them is the hardest part. And that's why I like starting off small. That's a really good point. Okay, I notice that we've got about 5 minutes left. So the final session that we're going to do is a Q&A. So we'll start off with a bit of a recap of this, and I'll ask people, what they thought, if they took any steps, watered any plants, and we'll do a bit like we started this one. But then it'll be a case of opening it up to just free conversation about psychology and ITP and whatever else. So please bring your questions if you've got any. Again, there's no pressure for anyone to talk. But yeah, that's the plan. Has anyone got any final questions, thoughts, or comments for today?
I've actually got one from. Was that you, Bonnie? Go on. Go ahead.
It was a really quick one, just to ask how you get that copy of that form.
It's the link is in the chat.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, and I will put the link on the YouTube channel as well tomorrow when I upload the video.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I've got one question from a Margaret, and it's what lots of people say. Can stress contribute to making ITP worse? And I suppose many ITP patients will say yes, it can. But Margaret says she's had 2 significant bouts of stress since her diagnosis, and on both occasions, when she's gone for a blood test for her count, the count has dropped. Just putting it out there to the rest of the people, is this your view as well? Have you had this feeling that your count has dropped, when you've been under undue stress?
Well, I'm new to it, so I don't know quite yet. It might have happened because I was under stress. I don't know. I don't know.
You will know when it happens anyway, because of the fatigue levels, etc. But yeah.
Isn't it the case that the increased stress has something to do with chronic inflammation, which affects the ITP side? I can't remember now. I just thought I remembered reading something about that.
That is possible. That is possible. Yeah.
When my job changed from a real frontward facing, quite intense, stressful job before COVID, and COVID came and changed the nature of a lot of our jobs, my platelets have never been so good. And it kind of made me see the element of stress that was impacting my ability to have fairly stable counts. So since COVID, my health has been significantly better because it was forced upon me to see what happened when I didn't have such a stressful job. And I would never have done that. I wouldn't have realised unless something forced me to do it. So I know now that stress is a massive factor in being stable.
Good.
Sorry, I know my name there is Jim Raskin, but I'm actually the Margaret that sent you that question, Mervyn.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I couldn't get rid of it. It was too late to kind of go out and come back in again. So sorry about that.
That's okay, Margaret. I hope that helps anyway, like what people were saying.
Yeah. I certainly would have experienced it anyway, that in response to stressful situations, my platelets drop and then become very erratic. Trying to get them back up to an acceptable level over probably weeks and months, depending on on where the stress is at.
Okay. Thank you, Margaret.
It's a brilliant question. It's exactly the kind of thing that we're after for the next session too. And as always, I might know a bit about psychology, but you guys are the real experts in living with ITP, right? So when I say Q&A, there'll be lots of opportunities for people to chip in, or at least that's what I would like, because that's where the best information comes from. So thank you everyone for listening today and for your contributions. It's been a pleasure as usual. Take a look at that sheet if you're interested. Once a week, water a plant. We'll meet again next time. We'll have a chat about how it went and we'll do the Q&A.
Okay, thank you everyone. You can register for Dr. Morgan's next session, which is on the 25th of September, right in ITP Awareness Week. So please register and please join us for that session. As you said, there will be lots of more opportunity to ask lots of questions on that session. I'm hoping we can get Professor Adrian Newland as well to join us for some of the more ITP orientated questions. Today we gave Adrian the day off because it's his birthday. So happy birthday to Professor Newland. So, okay. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and I hope you all found it usal. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Ron.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.